because of the way the world has changed, I've been trying to clean up my act and make it more sophisticated, because I've always been sort of fairly foul-mouthed in the stand-up department. And it's about that struggle, that failing struggle to try and get, to be a modern kind of a cool intellectual comedian.
And the success of it, or the lack of success of it, or does it not really matter?
It's mainly the lack of success of it, and the fact that I just like those kind of jokes so much, and I've always liked them and grew up with them, and that was how we communicated when we were youths in the West Midlands. Right. And I've stuck with it.
And so does that mean you can still, because of the context, you can then therefore carry on doing them? Is that the point?
I think you've recognised the trick straight off.
You don't need to be part of the Thursday Murder Club to figure this one out, do you? So you did it at the Edinburgh Fringe, this show, for fun, and always with an eye on maybe if it goes well, we'll take it somewhere else, or what? Well,
what management like you to do is commit to a massive tour and a London run and all that. But I thought, what if it's terrible? What if it dies in Edinburgh? And then when it went really well in Edinburgh, I thought, I wish I'd committed to that tour. So I've ended up doing 4 dates outside of London and a week in London to start off with, just to keep it bubbling under, and then more next year.
So that suggests a bit of insecurity, Frank.
Yeah, I always think the potential to fail is with me, certainly. Yeah.
But you don't strike me as insecure at all. So you're self-assured, because I think you have an amazing perspective on life in general, and therefore, go what you do for a living as well. When I think you are really clever. You're a really clever person. You're funny and you're clever. And so you go and see a comedian, or you watch a comedian and you go, oh, that's funny. Oh, and it's clever. It's like, not only is it funny, hilariously funny, but it's also really clever. Do you have to be clever to be a comedian? Or can you be like a footballer? Can you be just good at football? Can you just be funny? Because I think all comedians are really actually very clever. That's
I think probably the brightest people I've met are comedians, generally speaking. When you meet politicians and think, and you're running that. I want them to be cleverer than me.
Yeah.
But that never works. But comics are always very sharp and interesting.
Is that why if you get somebody slightly funny in public life, they do so much better than everybody else? Because it suggests, A, it helps them get their message across, and B, it subconsciously we all realise that they might actually have a brain cell or two.
Yeah, but I mean, if you think of the comedy you get in the House of Commons, that joke that people still quote was Vince Cable saying that Gordon Brown had turned from Joseph Stalin into Mr. Bean, and it's still quoted as a fantastic gag. And also, the only place in the world where turning from Joseph Stalin to Mr. Bean is seen as a bad thing. But it was a really ordinary gag, and the stuff that gets laughs there is mainly malice, I think. I try to avoid that.
That's context,
possible.
Isn't it? Because I remember when Trevor McDonald used to do the and finalies at the end of news at 10, and they were hilarious because of the context of the preceding 28 minutes.
Yes, but also that was reading out loud, which is always less impressive.
No, I know, but it's still a joke in the middle of all,
I went to see that Sondheim tribute, Old Friends, the other night. And the biggest cheer at the end was for the orchestra, all of which were using sheet music. So the only people who hadn't learnt it got the biggest cheer of the night. That seems wrong to me.
Yeah, I suppose so.
I learn it.
When you embark upon, a fringe, a run, and then maybe a longer run, and you're getting closer and closer to saying maybe you were right, maybe we should take it out on the road and book a few arenas and things like that. Is it because you feel the need to be funny, right? You think, I'm thinking, I need to be funny again for a bit, or because you have something to say?
I don't think it's because I have something to say. It's because I think this is funny. I want as many witnesses to that funniness as I can possibly find. And also, what usually happens when people stop touring, be they comics, musicians or whatever, is they say, I love the shows, but I hate hotels and late night driving. I love all that.
Right.
I love walking into a motorway services at 3 a.m. and buying a Krispy Kreme from the display case. Yeah. I mean, that's what I don't want to give up more than anything.
That's because you don't drink, though. because you still have the playful innocence of, not being the night not being dulled or sullied by you not having all your options open to you. I think.
Yeah, I thought it's the closest I get to an adventure now is the motorway
Krispy Kreme donuts at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, exactly.
So I've stopped drinking.
Ah.
It's really interesting. Yeah, it's not. I mean, where are we? I gave up on a Friday, so it's 125. I think it's 125 to 126 days today. I love it.
Well, a man stopped me on Shaftesbury Avenue the other night and said, will you pray for me that I can keep off the drink? And I thought, there aren't many comedians who would get a request like that. Didn't ask for a selfie or anything, just a prayer.
Good joke. And did you?
Of course.
Yeah. Interesting, isn't it? So interesting. At this age, at your age now, you're
66.
No way, you're 66.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. That's the greatest advert ever for not drinking. You're 4 years from 70.
I know, yeah.
Gee whiz, man.
I try not to think of it like that, but yes.
Jerry Seinfeld's 70-odd already, isn't he, I think? He looks amazing as well.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think he may be 70 or 71 or something like that.
I'm good with it. I think I've always been a 66-year-old man in waiting, even when I was about 15.
Yeah.
It really sort of suits me, the old guy thing.
A songwriter, so like the reason blokes seem not to be able to write decent songs past a certain age is because they haven't surrendered to who they are, maybe, or they're so busy playing amazing songs they wrote as kids. We had Bernie Taupin in the other day.
Oh, yeah.
He wrote his book is brilliant, by the way. He's got this book. It's an unbelievable memoir. So interesting.
He's good with words.
Oh, he's pretty good with words. He wrote your song when he was 17, whilst Elton's mum was making them fried eggs in the kitchen. It took him 10 minutes.
Now that is...
What the heck is that about? That's such a profound song. It's such a wise song. It's so at ease with itself.
I used to do a bit about that because the bit was, if I was a sculptor, but then again, no. And I always used to think, well, why bring it up?
Because he's 17. And he says he was umming and ahhing. He's like, maybe this, maybe that.
Yeah.
He's got time to think about things. Here's what I'm not doing. What I'm not doing is as interesting to me as what I am doing. Maybe other people think that. Maybe they won't.
We always have that as teenagers, what about sculpting? That's always there as an option.
Who sculpts?
I've got the chisels. It's a shame to waste them.
You should have done the interview. But it's so funny because, when songwriters get old, especially blokes for some reason, they just won't write what their life is because in a way it's like, oh no, because that's not who I was, and things have moved on, and what was a rite of passage now going forwards, looking back, doesn't seem to be as appealing to them, and therefore maybe not their audience. Different with you though, because you're 66 and you're still smashing it. Yeah,
well, I like to think I've got Funnier, but I do,
which is funny in itself
because it's all about sausage meat for making the sausages, and obviously the older you get, the more years, the more days, the more sausage meat. There's more experiences, more things happening, and different things happen to you as you get older, as you know.
Yeah, go on, give us a bit of flavour of what you're talking about there.
Well, oh gosh, that's what they call a hospital pass.
Sorry, no, but okay, well, don't. It doesn't
For
matter.
example, I can't really enjoy alphabetti spaghetti nowadays unless I'm wearing my reading glasses.
Very
that
good.
kind of thing.
That's good. Good. Do you think that maybe, right, as we get older, it's not us. I can't speak for comedians, but comedians. You're a comedian, of course. It's not that comedians get less popular. It's just that their audience can't be bothered to go out.
That might be.
Do you know what I mean?
But I get quite a bit of white hair as well. Sometimes we don't even need to put the house lights in. They generate their... when it snows, it never really gets dark. When there's snow on the ground, it's like that. So I get those. I get the mix, but they sit at the front because they want to be able to hear me and stuff.
When it snows, it never really gets dark. That's hilarious.
You must have noticed
it's
that.
So true. I had a paper round for 5 years. Yeah, I know. And also, sound carries much further when it snows for some bizarre reason.
But it is fascinating, that thing, what happens to... Why isn't Paul McCartney still writing Yesterday now? I asked Steve Davis... I said in 1981 you were undoubtedly so brilliant at snooker. I remember discussions about you. They might have to give you a handicap like in golf.
Yeah.
To make it worth playing other people. I said, and now, but they were still playing then. And I said, you're still losing a lot. He said, don't you think I've asked myself that many? He said, you just do a bit less practice and there's a bit less focus and a bit less striving when you've already done it all.
Well, they do say it's because it's such a precision sport, snooker, because it's a still ball. So you're not reacting. There's no energy coming towards you. You decide all the energy in that shot. And it's very similar to golf.
Well, I've done gigs like that when there's no energy coming towards me.
Yeah, well, how's that feel? So you should know.
I like to think, as a comic, the secret is when you're having a bad night to still have a good night. So you go on to professional mode.
You must never have a bad night.
Well, I haven't had a bad night for a while, but I always think there's one on the horizon. Otherwise, I interviewed marvellous Marvin Hagler once, the boxer, and his slogan was, to be a champion, you have to think like a challenger.
Right.
And I think that's true of stand-up as well.
Do you remember the last bad night you had?
I remember one in Montreal. I remember it because it was reviewed by the comedy website Chortle and thus immortalised. I thought, tonight they're in. And I hadn't done stand-up for a bit and they made me the headliner and I was really rusty and a bit of stuff didn't go early and I lost confidence. And I remember the pain of it. But it's good to remember it because on the days when you think, maybe I won't write any stuff today, I remember that gig and think, you know what, maybe I will.
When you lose confidence on stage, which hasn't happened for a while, how does that manifest itself?
With a sort of terrible emptiness and fear. And I remember having a bad gig and going into the supermarket the next day. And the woman said, are you a comedian? And I said, no.
Not anymore.
No, I said no. I thought it is not morally correct for me to say I'm a comedian after what happened last night. And I couldn't say it until I had the next good gig.
But on stage in the moment, what happens? Because, you know, when something happens in a meeting or you have an uncomfortable situation with your spouse or whoever it may be, you know, it is a well-known fact that our capillaries constrict and therefore all our senses, our peripheral vision, our hearing, it all gets very focused because we're in fear. And so we get very targeted like we would do, you know, thousands of years ago being chased down by something that wants to eat us. It's the same kind of physical and chemical reaction.
Well, you said earlier you didn't think I had any sort of self-doubt. And there is part of me that is true. A comedian who I won't name, a young comic, said to me at a party the other week, I think you are the best British comedian of all time. And I said, well, I kind of agree with that. I might have dropped the British. And I think there is part of me that thinks I'm the funniest man on the planet. And I've thought that for some years. And I can't shrug that off, that feeling. So if it does go bad, I still think this is, you know that thing about form is temporary and
class
all
is
that.
Permanent.
Class is. I still think, in a swaggering, arrogant way, but I try and keep it internal.
Right.
That. This is a blip, but I know I've got something special and that cannot be damaged.
I don't care if any of that was true or not, and I don't know.
That is true.
The Frank Skinner Show, 11 million viewers a week, 7 series of that. Room 101. How are you in telly nowadays? Do you think about it? Do you hanker after it? What was it like then? What do you think about TV now?
Well, I end up, I do like poetry documentaries on Sky Arts there, but not like I did. I used to do 5 series a year. I don't know about you, because we were both pretty hot at the same time. I had a dream about, and I don't normally talk about dreams, but in the dream I was in a really, really luxurious hotel room, but there was somebody knocking on the door like that going, Frank, you need Frank. And I woke up, I thought, and I thought, oh my God, my life was like that for about 20 years. Yeah. Of all the loveliness and the luxury and breakfast in bed and other stuff in bed, but someone always banging on the door.
Yeah.
And this is the sort of thing that people say when they're TV career crumbles, they say, well, of course, I've had enough anyway. So I'm not saying that, I'd like to be saying no to more things.
Right.
Is basically what I'm saying. But I don't miss that knocking on the door.
Yeah.
And also, I've got a kid and that now. You do a deal when you have a kid and you think, you know what, I've got so much to give and I'm going to give it to this thing at home, not so much out there. But I don't want to be one of those soap stars who say I'm leaving, for other projects and they turn out to be 1,000-piece jigsaws.
Yeah.